This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 103, B2B and B2C Content Marketing. Are they really that different? Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is January 1st, 2015. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 103 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. It means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. Before we get down to business today, I want to take this opportunity to wish you a very happy 2015. Wish you all success and much prosperity in the new year, and as my friend J.D. Gershbein says, the good health with which to enjoy it. And I just want to share a couple of thoughts on this new year that was just born a few hours ago here. I predict that 2015 is going to be the year that content marketing comes off the back burner. If you will, pardon my French, shit's about to get real, okay? I think businesses who have been thinking about, it would be nice to have a blog, it would be nice to start creating this content, I think it's going to become not just a nice to have anymore. I think they're going to get really serious about getting into the content, getting into that content sphere. So if you are brand new to the podcast, if you decided that 2015 is the year you get a handle on this content marketing thing, I want to bid you a hearty welcome to the podcast. We are happy to have you. And if you are brand new to content marketing, I really advise you to go back and listen to some earlier episodes, especially the Content Marketing 101 series that we did at the very beginning. And, even if you are at the beginning of your content marketing journey, you are still at the forefront of what I think will be a huge area of interest and activity in 2015. And I predict this will be the year that a lot of your competitors are going to start struggling to catch up with you. They're going to see what you're doing with blogging, with email, with podcasts, and they're going to start thinking about it because you are leading the way. So don't be surprised if your phone starts ringing and people start asking, hey, how'd you put that ebook together? Or how'd you create that podcast? So in a word, congratulations. You are at the forefront of the big deal in marketing for 2015. That is my prediction for what it's worth. Okay, on to business. In last week's episode, I was thrilled to welcome our guest, John Buskell of Jauntist Media, and as of today of Moondog Marketing and Media, to discuss some lessons learned in 2014 and trends to look for in this bright, shiny new year of ours. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. Today we are not only kicking off a new year, but also a new month, and with every month comes a new theme here at Resonance. And this month's theme is we are devoting all our content to B2B content marketing, business to business content marketing. And today we're going to be talking about B2B versus B2C, business to consumer content marketing, and whether they're really all that different. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. As you might imagine, it's been a pretty quiet week in the content marketing and social media worlds, but I do have some news out of Google+. They have launched a pretty cool video enhancement feature. So if you upload a video to Google+, you will have the option of clicking something called Auto Enhance. And what that will do is Google+ will automatically analyze the picture and make adjustments. It will adjust the color. It will attempt to correct some shakiness. And what you'll see is if you are uploading on a desktop, you're going to have the option to preview that video. So it will show you like a split screen, and the left side would be before the enhancements and the right side would be after the enhancements. And after you see that preview, you'll have the option to apply the enhancements or not. And I used it this week and it actually works pretty well. It corrected some of the, I had a little bit of overexposure going on in the video that I had uploaded, and it corrected that for me. And I have to say the enhanced version looked quite a bit better. So if you do a lot of video and you're engaged in Google+, I highly recommend you check out this auto enhance feature. Okay, this week's content hit of the week, I really had to search because I am so tired of seeing, top 10 predictions for 2015. And this post is kind of in that vein, but it goes a little bit deeper. The title of the post is "What's Next for Content Marketing? You." And that is written by Robert Rose on the Content Marketing Institute blog. Now, Robert Rose may be a familiar name to many of you. He is the chief strategist of the Content Marketing Institute, works very closely with our friend Joe Palizzi. And he has given us a very insightful and a thought-provoking post about the next big thing in content marketing. And it really, after reading it, I could see it just sets itself apart from all those kind of generic what to watch for in 2015. I'm going to read you a quote here from Robert's post. He says, "To succeed, marketers must step out of the shampoo, rinse, repeat cycle of chasing campaign-oriented capabilities around every emerging channel. They must not only describe the value of their brand, they must create differentiated value separate and distinct from that brand." So the post is really about when brands go out there to create their content, to really take it to the next level and to really show not only why they're amazing, but really who they are and why their brand is different, what sets them apart from their competitors. It's kind of hard for me to summarize, but it's a very interesting post, and I highly recommend that you check it out, and I will provide the link to it in the blog post for this episode. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment. We're going to take a look at B2B versus B2C content marketing and ask the question of whether they are all that different. Before we get to the meat of our discussion today, I'm going to be true to my Catholic school 8th grade composition class and start our discussion by making sure we're all on the same page with what we're talking about. So if you're not familiar with the terms B2B and B2C marketing, I'm going to explain those very quickly. B2C is business to consumer marketing. So that is marketing products or services to consumers, to individual people. B2B is business to business marketing, and that is marketing products or services to companies or to organizations. And these are two terms that you'll hear marketers throw around fairly often. And we're going to talk about those a little bit in much more detail in the next few minutes. So if we look at B2B and B2C marketing, there are two extreme the different schools of thought. There are two extremes. On one side, we have the hardliners, and those folks are saying B2B and B2C have absolutely nothing in common. They are totally different creatures. In fact, if you're in B2B marketing and you start learning some best practices from places like Starbucks or Nike, you can just throw those out the window, because if you're in the B2B field, there is no common ground whatsoever with the B2C folks. So those are the hardliners. On the other end of the spectrum, we have what I call the hippies. And those are the folks saying there's absolutely no difference. It is all marketing to people, no matter who those people are. In fact, I've heard some people claim that the terms B2B and B2C are completely outdated and we need to focus on P2P, which is person-to-person marketing. So on one side, they're saying the two have nothing in common. On the other side, they're saying there's absolutely no difference. Now, I find myself, surprise, somewhere in the middle, leaning a little bit closer to the hippie side, but I believe that here's how I see the two. I see B2B and B2C as two tribes within the same clan, to put it in, to use a family allegory here. They share the same basic DNA. However, there are some key differences that we would be wise to acknowledge as we create our content marketing strategies. And I'm going to go through some of those here in a minute. Now, I can say this with some assurance because my company, Resonance, serves clients in both the B2B and B2C realms. And yes, there are some practices that are absolutely applicable to both, but there are some differences that I certainly need to be aware of and that marketers in general need to be aware of, whether you are on the agency side or on the client side. So first I want to talk about what B2B and B2C have in common. The first thing is they both share the cardinal rule of content marketing, and that is it's all about the audience. Okay, it's all about the person who is on the other side of that content and whether that content is speaking to their pain points, helping to solve their problems. Is it informing, educating, entertaining, or inspiring them? But and whether that audience is, let's say, a mom shopping for school clothes or a corporate marketing executive looking for a new content management system. They both share the fact that they are all about the audience, and they both really need to focus on the audience and what that person needs. Another thing they have in common is that they both solve problems. You know, again, getting back to the fundamentals of content marketing, those, like Jay Bear says, we need to stop focusing on trying to be amazing and just be useful. Find out what people need and give it to them before they even think to ask for it. And again, those problems, the nature of those problems would be different for those different markets. So a common, a consumer problem might be, my refrigerator just went out and it's Christmas Eve and we've got all this food that's going to spoil if we don't get someone to fix it. And on the B2B side, it could be, wow, our top salesperson just left and we need to get some help on the sales side. So the nature of problems are different, but that content, the spirit behind the content has got to be reaching through those differences and solving problems for those specific audience members to let them know that, yes, we're here, we have the expertise that you need to solve your problems, and we're going to help you get through this. And a third thing that I want to mention that they both have in common is they're both in the business of building relationships. B2B and B2C are both about delivering content that helps to build a relationship. And I would even venture to say that B2B is even more about relationships than business to consumer. So, for example, let's say I am thinking about buying some new athletic shoes. Well, I have a good relationship with Zappos, and I really like the content that they put out there, really enjoy engaging with them. But, if I find that pair of New Balance running shoes $30 cheaper on another site, then, I might think twice about that loyalty. But however, on the B2B side, if a company, let's say, chooses a marketing agency, it's really, really painful for them to change. It's painful for them to move to another vendor. So those relationships are so important on the B2B side, just because change is so painful. It requires going through, different approval levels and getting to know a whole different group of people. And so those relationships are really, really key. But I would venture to say that relationships are quite valuable on both sides, on the B2B side and on the B2C side. Now, looking at some of the differences between B2B and B2C, this is where things get interesting. For one, B2B typically has a much longer sales cycle. So going back to my decision of where to get my athletic shoes, I might surf around for an hour, looking for those athletic shoes, but it's not going to take me a whole heck of a lot of time to make that decision. Whereas on the other hand, if a business is looking at a new software to serve a specific purpose, that process could go on for months and even could go on for a year or more, because things don't move that quickly, and they want to make sure that they pick the right person. So that when we talk about B2B, we're typically talking about a multi-level sales cycle, and that's where content can really help at each different phase of that sales cycle. Whereas the B2C sales cycle is much shorter, and content is a little bit, it doesn't have to be as specialized, because how do I want to say this? It's more all-encompassing to getting people's attention and building relationships and guiding them toward that sale. Another key difference is that the B2B process may involve or probably does involve multiple players. So, going back to our example, my decision to buy a new pair of New Balance athletic shoes does not involve anyone else but me. I don't have to clear it with anybody else. Pay it out of when I find what I want, I pull out my credit card and I buy it. Whereas on the B2C side, you may have the situation of, for example, let's say a VP of marketing says, we need a new content management system. And he may go to his director of marketing and say, hey, we need to get a new content management system. I need you to find a new system and just handle this. Well, the director may speak to one of her direct reports and say, okay, I want you to find the 3 best options for a content management system and bring them to me, and then we'll make a decision. Well, that director or that direct report, who may be a manager, may go to one of his or her direct reports and say, okay, I want you to go out on Google and find out what the top 10 content management systems are. I want you to research them very carefully and send me the top 10 that you find, and then we will work to find out the 3 so you can see how those multiple levels are involved, and our content really needs to speak to that. So when we are speaking to someone at that very top of the funnel, if we want to put it in terms of a funnel, the top of the funnel, when people are just researching, we need to keep in mind that who is doing that research might not be the final decision maker. That might not be the VP of marketing who says we need a new content management system. It may be a marketing specialist, or it may even be the intern, or it may be an admin in the department. We need to be very conscious of who is taking in that content and tailor it to the questions that they're asking and the information that they need to pass on to their superiors, so that eventually, maybe months down the road, a decision can be made. So we need to keep in mind all these multiple players that are going to be involved and really tailor our content to each level of that decision-making process. The final difference that I want to talk about is B2B is much more bottom line oriented. So we need to make sure that we are talking about, when we talk about the products or the services or the solutions that we offer, we need to keep in mind that bottom line. Does it save time and does it save money? And that is, it's not the be-all and end-all, because not everybody is looking for definitely everybody's not looking for the lowest cost option, but they're looking for the optimized option, if you will. So every time we talk to a B2B audience, we need to be very conscious of keeping that bottom line in mind, because eventually this is going to have to be sold to someone up the food chain, and this person needs to make sure that they have their ducks in a row and whatever research they need and whatever facts they need to present it as a good decision for the bottom line. So those are a few of the key differences. There are many, many more, and like I said, we're going to be talking about this all month long, and we'll be talking about much more of those differences between B2B and B2C. So I want to talk a little bit about the specific role of content in the B2B realm. So if your company is a B2B business, if the people who buy your products and services are organizations, you want to be very conscious of that customer's buying process. And this is where it really will behoove you to sit down with your sales team and really get to know what that buying process is like. Because what marketing wants to do and what you want to do with your content marketing program is to have content plugged in at every phase of that buying process. So just to give you an example, we might call phase 1 the research phase. So this would be, to go back to our corporate example, when the manager goes to the specialist and says, okay, go out on Google and find me 10 good content marketing system options that we can start culling from. So this is where people are out there doing research. They're not signed up for anything. They're not on any lists. So this is where your blog comes into play. This is where your YouTube channel comes into play. This is where your social media presence comes into play. So this has to be content that really speaks to that person who is in that research mode, who might not even know what a content marketing system or content management system is, and really helping them along and making that process easier for them. So from there, from a phase 2 standpoint, it might be the person who is looking a little bit deeper. So maybe it's the person who has gotten that list of the 10 options to look at, and they want to know a little bit more. At this phase, you might want to think about offering a white paper or maybe an ebook where you would. So, for example, someone who is engaged with your blog or left a comment on your blog or asked a question, you might invite that person to download a white paper or an ebook or maybe an audio or a video resource that can provide a little bit more in-depth information to help them make their decision. From there, you might go on to a phase 3, which might include a webinar. And now that the person is engaged on another level, you might take it a step further, saying, hey, join us at our monthly webinar. It's on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. We'd love to have you there. And that's where you can get even more in-depth. And that's beneficial because they're attending live. So you can have that live interaction with them. And then as they move down the sales funnel, you might want to get into more specific information like a case study. You may have a case study of a company that's very similar to this business that you're talking to, and that case study would help them see how your product or service was able to help someone in a very similar situation. So that's kind of a quick and dirty description of how a sales funnel might look for a B2B business and how content can really be plugged in at each phase of this decision-making process to help it along. And it's a way to help the decision maker with their decision making, right? It's to provide them the information that makes that process easier for them, and hopefully decide on your company when they come to make that decision. So, and these B2B decisions, there really are, research is much more important because we are talking about very high dollars. Like I said, it's very painful for businesses to change. So they want to make sure that they make the right decision because they are going to, by gum, they are going to stick with it no matter what. Also, what content does is it helps establish your expertise in your chosen field. And I think this is why a lot of B2B marketers are really catching on in the content marketing world because, expertise is important. Everybody's out there saying that they're the best option. Nothing new. You're not going to say anything bad about yourself. But content is a way to really put that expertise front and center and make people sit up and say, wow, these folks know their stuff. They deserve to be considered in this decision that we are making. Also, I mentioned case studies. Case studies can be extremely important because it puts a spotlight on how you were able to solve a problem or how your product or service was able to solve a problem for a client who may be similar to the person that you're talking to. So that's another key difference between B2B and B2C. Those case studies carry a lot of weight because they're bringing the prospect a little bit closer and showing them, okay, if you were to sign up with us, here's what that might look like, and here are the similar results that we might be able to achieve for you. So that's kind of my take on the similarities and differences between B2B and B2C marketing, and specifically how content plays a role in that B2B sales process. As I said, we're going to be going into much greater detail as the month goes on. This is the month of B2B marketing here at Resonance. But before I close, I want to say just a word about style, since we are talking about content marketing in the B2B sphere. There's a myth out there that B2B content has got to be just dry as dust and totally straightforward and having no personality whatsoever. And I think if you approach it from that standpoint, it is a one-way ticket to just blending in with everybody else out there. Because I always say, if we're all out there trying to be capital P professional, we're all going to sound alike and there's going to be no differentiation. So if you are a content marketer in the B2B field, I encourage you to look for ways to interject some personality and some style and some flair, and maybe even some fun, God forbid, in your content. And two great examples of this are Hootsuite and HubSpot. Now, these are two companies, both of whom serve businesses. I'm sure some consumers use Hootsuite to manage their various social media profiles, but by and large, they both serve businesses. And Hootsuite, for example, they have a great deal of fun with their marketing. For example, they recently updated their user interface, and to introduce it, they created a really fun video that parodied the. Did you ever see the mean tweets? I think it's Jimmy Fallon's late night show. They do the mean tweets, so he'll do celebrities reading mean tweets that people have posted about them, and so they did a parody of this, and they had some of their staffers reading things like, "Oh, Hootsuite's user interface sucks, and they've got to be kidding me," and blah blah blah, and just really kind of poking fun at how quote unquote bad their old interface was in the process of introducing this new interface. And it was really cool, and it was a lot of fun, and people really responded to it well. Another example is HubSpot. HubSpot has just a tremendous personality in the content out there. Now, yes, they are serious in the information that they share, but they're not afraid to let their personality show. I remember a couple of years ago, they had around the holiday season, they had a Caption This contest on Facebook with a little unicorn puppet that they would show in certain scenarios around the office, and they would invite people to create their own zany captions. So, and I'm not saying that you have to be that, that creative and that out there, but, be willing to push the envelope a little bit and to share a little bit of your personality. And if you have multiple contributors, invite people to share their own personalities within the brand, but just to be really, really personal and really engaging. So that's kind of my high-level view of B2B versus B2C content marketing as I see it, and we will be covering it all this month. So if you have any questions or want to join in the conversation, I would love to hear from you, and I will provide that info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about personas in the B2B world. Now, of course, in a B2B marketing situation, the ultimate goal is to get the okay from the decision maker, from the person who can maybe not physically sign the check, but, okay the expense and give the thumbs up for the sale. But that's not the only person to consider as you create your content. As we talked about earlier, the B2B sales cycle is a multi-layered process. And what I encourage you to do is to create personas for each level of person that you are going to interact with, or that your content needs to speak to, rather, on each of those levels. So, for example, if you are in the IT business and you are selling in the business of selling software to corporations, maybe the VP of technology would be the ultimate decision maker. That would be the person to actually sign off and make the deal go through. But that person may task the director with finding a certain solution, and the director may task one of his or her direct reports for going out and looking at the options available. So it's a multi-layered process, and each level is equally important because you don't want to lose them at any level. You don't want to not even make the basic list that gets handed up to the manager, nor do you want to lose people at higher levels when they're calling down that list. So it's really important to be conscious of the people who are interacting with your content at each level of the process. So I encourage you to go ahead and create personas for each level of person. Who is going to be doing the initial research? What does that person look like? What have they been tasked with doing, and what questions do they need answered? And then what's the next level up from there? What does that person need from you? What kind of information? Will they need very intense research that a white paper might be able to provide? Think about what each level really needs from you from a content standpoint to get to the next level of the decision-making process. And as you create your content and slot it into those different phases of your sales process, make sure you know exactly who it is you're talking to and how you're addressing that person's specific problems. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast on this New Year's Day. Hope you're enjoying those New Year's festivities. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who has left us reviews already. I so appreciate you taking the time to do that. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. I also invite you to check out our monthly webinar series. On the last Wednesday of each month, we conduct a free VIP webinar, and the next one will be on B2B content marketing on January 28th. To register, just go to resonancewebinar.com. That's ResonanceWebinar, resonancewebinar, all one word.com. I would love to have you join us. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from one of my all-time favorite poets, T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot once wrote, quote, "Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.